All right, we are jumping right back into this thing with rounds 5 and 6. If you have not already, check out rounds 1, 2, and 3 and 4 on the same YouTube page. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time checking out the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that bell, so that way you don't miss any of the fantasy football content coming soon. But let's go ahead. Let's jump into rounds 5 and 6. Again, this is an entry into the um, uh, Underdog. I can't even remember the name of it now, but uh, what is it, Ultimate Fan Mega something? I can't even remember. Who cares? That's going to be such a bad butcher to the beginning of the video. But let's just go ahead and jump into the picks. It'll come back to me. Best Ball Mania, something like that. So this is my second entry. Let's go ahead and take a look at rounds 5 and 6. So we see Kenneth Walker. He's fallen all the way to the beginning of the fifth round. If you're a team that needs running backs, and at this point, all this guy had was Brees Hall. I absolutely love it still. I think you're a little bit concerned about Charbonnet potentially taking over more of the workload than we're expecting, but I think as we draft here today, you'd have to expect Kenneth Walker to still be, the main guy there in Seattle, at least to start the season. Drake London at the 5.2. I do not mind this as well. Only issue there is I don't see him taking a massive leap because they have not taken a massive leap at the quarterback position. Once he gets a quarterback, whether that be Caleb Williams through the draft or something like that this year, I think Drake London can be absolutely phenomenal. I think if you're in a dynasty league, he's a guy to go out there and go try and snag before he really breaks out. This year is just going to be tough with the quarterback situation in Atlanta. Justin Fields, the next quarterback, goes off at 5.3. Again, this is another one I don't necessarily hate. If you're high on Fields, this has him going as, I believe, the seventh quarterback off the board now. I would have taken him there as well. I do not blame you. I mean, he's one of the quarterbacks where if he still has that running upside that he had last year, you could draft him and one other quarterback in this draft and be pretty well set. So if you feel that way about Justin Fields, he's a great best ball draft option. If you're still a little bit, worried about the Chicago offense, his lack of throwing last season, things like that, you may want to avoid him in this kind of a setting. But if you think he can really break out, this is a great place to get him. Joe Mixon at the 5.4. I'm not really going to speak too much on him. If he comes back and he's the three down back for Cincinnati, he's going to be extremely good, and that's going to be an extremely valuable pick right there. If his legal situation or contract situation or whatever it is ends up becoming worse, this could be a completely wasted pick in the fifth round. So we have no idea when it comes to Joe Mixon at this point. DJ Moore and then Michael Pittman going right here at the 5.5 and 5.6. I think both of these guys are relatively similar, both with very questionable quarterbacks, both on offenses that are going to want to run the ball quite a bit. I like DJ Moore a little bit more, as funny as that is to say. I think that he does have more breakout potential than Michael Pittman. I think we saw last year Michael Pittman kind of is just a PPR machine, kind of. If he gets his 8 to 10 targets, he's going to find something to do with them. If he gets in the end zone, you're happy. Whereas DJ Moore, I think, has potential, wide receiver one ability if Justin Fields is able to take the next step. Also, I think it's going to be really hard for Michael Pittman to really take the next step in the offense that the Indianapolis Colts are going to be running this season. I expect a lot of Anthony Richardson using his mobility. I don't necessarily think Michael Pittman's going to flourish for fantasy football. Next, we got J.K. Dobbins at the 5.7, followed up by another running back in Aaron Jones at the 5.8. I think I probably am going Jones over Dobbins, but it also depends on what you believe. I mean, we'll see what happens in Green Bay. Again, I'm a little iffy on a lot of their weapons right now, but I still think Aaron Jones has just been phenomenal, both running the ball and catching the ball out of the backfield. A.J. Dillon has not really shown enough for me to be super concerned with him coming in and just taking over that backfield. Whereas in Baltimore, J.K. Dobbins, if he's healthy, he could be really good. He's probably not going to catch too many balls out of the backfield. I'm a little bit skeptical on how high his ceiling can be for fantasy football. Whereas Aaron Jones, we know he's probably not going to hit his ultimate ceiling because he's getting a little bit older, but I still think his floor is higher than J.K. Dobbins, at least this year. George Kittle, all the way down here at the 5.9. I do not mind this pick at all. I think this is a great spot to go ahead and grab a tight end. Honestly, George Kittle is another one of those guys where you have to determine your level of comfortability. Are you good with just getting Kittle now and then grabbing someone super late in the draft, or do you feel like you need to get Kittle and then two other tight ends to feel safe with either his injury history? San Francisco has a bunch of weapons. How are they going to be able to feed them all for fantasy? There's a lot of questions there. I think where you get them, if you want to go Kittle and then maybe pick up someone like Chigakonkwo, I really like grabbing Kittle in that spot. And then here we go. So we got JSN already off the board. Tyler Lockett has not been drafted as of this point. This is where I get a little bit skeptical. So we have JSN, and this guy has Jerry Judy, DK Metcalf, Rashad Bateman, Nick Chubb, Ramondre Stevenson, Deshaun Watson. So this guy, I'm not going to lie, I don't really think he's building that great of a team. I mean, he's stacking up DK Metcalf with JSN. He stacked up Nick Chubb with Deshaun Watson. So this guy may not be the best fantasy football drafter ever, but I cannot take JSN this early. I mean, I know he probably wants a wide receiver. I would take Godwin. I would take Brown. I don't know about Ayuk. Evans is right there with them, and I wouldn't take Addison. So I personally, I just don't think JSN's going to have the rookie value that we, have been used to seeing from like a Chris Olave and a Garrett Wilson. I think JSN he's on a good team with a solid offense. There's just going to be so many weapons. And we saw the Seattle offense last year was so fruitful for the wide receiver position because there was really only two of them that were targeted enough to make an impact throughout the entire season in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Now that we throw a third one in there, there's a chance all three, the other two are going to come down a little bit, and JSN is going to be kind of, on the line of playable / not playable for your, at home leagues. And, we'll see if he's able to get bumped up and maybe passes Tyler Lockett at some point. It's just, I think he's going to be big play. I think he has touchdown potential. It's just where he's at there and where there's other people still on the board that I would take over him. I can't say take JSN this early in drafts. And in all honesty, I don't think he would be the first wide receiver that I would take out of this rookie class either. I just don't think he has that great of breakout potential just based on his situation. We also have to see Geno do it 2 years in a row. Not saying that he can't because I was against him last year and I don't want to be on that side of things again, but we'll see if he's able to repeat what he did last season. History would tell us that's most likely not going to happen. So with my fifth round pick, I got a running back I absolutely love fell to me. Obviously, at this point, I just had Jahmyr Gibbs, which is going to be a little bit questionable, and then I had a pretty solid stacked wide receiver core. So Miles Sanders here, I think is going to be a 3-down back. I think Carolina's going to try and run the ball quite a bit. We obviously saw how good he was in Philadelphia. I think he can actually get to another level. The Carolina offensive line is not that of Philadelphia's, but it is still very good. I think Miles Sanders, he's a guy who's going to be, I think, a high-end RB2 this season. Could potentially sneak in as an RB1 just based off workload alone, and if he gets the touchdown luck. Dameon Pierce, Kyle Pitts, not a bad, two to take on the turn. Obviously, with just having ETN, he probably felt like he needed to grab another workhorse, which Dameon Pierce seems to be that guy. We got Stephon Diggs, CD Amari. So he actually just selected that. So that's kind of a weird two stack on tight ends, especially when some of your rooms are kind of lacking. But, as of this pick right here, I don't necessarily mind Kyle Pitts. Again, same thing I said with Drake London. It's just the quarterback situation is going to be rough. And if that's what if that's who you're depending on to produce fantasy points, it's just going to be tough for you to be happy with Kyle Pitts or Drake London this season. And they have Bijan as well, which I imagine is going to get more work out of the backfield catching the ball than their running backs did last year. So then with my 6th-round pick, I ended up going with a guy that I am extremely high on, and I was extremely high on last year with the coaching change as well as bringing in some new offensive weapons, and that is Trevor Lawrence. Absolutely love him. I think that there was a clear tier drop-off of quarterbacks. Same thing with my Miles Sanders pick here. So I was extremely satisfied with my 5-6 turn. Again, we see here Deshaun Watson goes right after Trevor Lawrence. I think that is a massive drop-off. We'll see if Deshaun can get it back, but coming off of last year going into next season, I wouldn't even consider Deshaun Watson in the same class as Trevor Lawrence. So I'm happy with that. Again, I don't want to trash this guy's pick because I kind of already said I don't really like his draft so far. Obviously, he felt like he needed a quarterback For me at that point, when I'm looking at all of this talent that you're passing up for Deshaun Watson, I'm probably just going ahead, grabbing one of these players and stacking two quarterbacks with my next two picks or something like that. I, again, just do not love what this guy's doing in the draft. Chris Godwin, Marquise Brown. I love both these picks for very similar reasons. They're both on offenses that are going to have rough quarterback play to start this year, but they're going to be the PPR machine for their team. Marquise Brown, we saw last year with Kyler Murray, was phenomenal. We'll obviously see what happens with their backup until Kyler gets back, but I still think he can be great. And Chris Godwin has been great for fantasy football just about every year he's been in the league. I think if you're in need of a guy that's going to be a possession wide receiver, maybe want some PPR points like this right here, I think that's a great way to slot in Chris Godwin. Brandon Ayuk, he is a guy that a lot of fantasy analysts and NFL people are really high on this year. I don't necessarily mind it. I do think he could break out. My only issue is, again, San Francisco has so many offensive weapons that it's going to be extremely inconsistent, and that's been the knock on Brandon Ayuk up until this point in his career. Is he can have a game with 8 targets, 6 catches for 80 something yards and a touchdown, or he can have a game where he has 3 targets for 2 catches for 20 yards. So that's the Brandon Ayuk roller coaster that you're on, that you're signing up for when you're drafting him. Mike Evans is kind of the same guy right now, and I would say we're losing Tom Brady. Obviously, when he had Jameis, he was really good for fantasy. We'll see what Baker can do. I'm not gonna. If I'm being honest, I don't necessarily love Mike Evans in this offense with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's not an accurate down the field thrower in the NFL. If Kyle Trask is in there, we'll see what he can do with him. I want Godwin out of either of those two guys, but again, Mike Evans has been great for fantasy football ever since he's entered the league. I can understand taking him. I think I'm taking Treylon Burks over him probably, just based on him being more up and coming, whereas Mike Evans may have a down year, and this may be the beginning of the end for Mike Evans. I may be completely wrong. This may be an extremely valuable pick, but we kind of saw last year when Tom Brady wasn't necessarily able to push the ball down the field as consistently, Mike Evans' fantasy value dipped big time until he decided to absolutely screw me in championship week. But nevertheless, okay, let's stop it there. So now we got Jordan Addison. Don't mind it. I do see room for him to break out this year as a rookie, obviously alongside Justin Jefferson. They do have T.J. Hawkinson. Dalvin Cook is going to be gone, so they'll have Madison and whatever running back system they run. I think Addison has a really good chance at breaking out and having some value on a week to week basis. So we'll see how that pick pans out. Where I'm seeing him fall right now in drafts, I really like this. I think him and Burks right here in this kind of range are just excellent values. Dallas Goedert. So this is a guy. He got Jalen Hurts earlier in the draft. He knew he wasn't going to be able to stack him with Devontae or A.J. Brown, obviously. So he went ahead and pulled the trigger on his first tight end, Goddard. I love Goddard. I think as long as he can stay healthy, he could be one of those, top 5, top 6 tight ends in the NFL and for fantasy football. I've said enough about Treylon Burks. I think if, we'll see what happens with Tannehill or if Willis ends up beating him out, eventually, however it works. I think he has our wide receiver 2 potential. I think he's also a guy that has really big play potential. Alrighty, let's jump over here. Dalvin Cook. So this is really, I don't really have any fantasy analysis when it comes to Dalvin Cook. If he ends up in Dallas, I don't really love. For this value, I don't know if I love it or hate it because I don't know what him and Pollard are going to look like together. So for right now, I'm not going to say much on Dalvin Cook. I need to see where he lands. I need to see how the offensive. Need to see how the offseason kind of pans out for that team. Other things like that. And then to wrap up the 6th round, we have Kadarius Toney from my Kansas City Chiefs. Don't necessarily mind that here. Very boom or bust kind of player. Obviously has hamstring injuries that go on and on and on that basically have plagued his career so far. I believe it is only his 3rd year in the NFL. He was a first-round pick out of Florida. Does have some blue-chip potential. So obviously the Chiefs have a lot of young wide receivers. You're really just calling your shot on these drafts whenever you take them. At the 6-7 turn, I don't mind it, especially with the guy who he got along with him. But Tony, I'm just going to be the first one to say it. If he doesn't pan out for fantasy football, don't be too surprised. But that'll wrap up rounds 5 and 6. We are currently in round 8 of the draft. As you can see, I am on the clock. You can see I'm kind of in a little bit of a pickle here because this is not where I love to be in this draft. I grabbed Dotson. He was the last wide receiver of a tier. Now I get to kind of pick out of these kind of crappy running backs. So I'm going to do some time, do some research in here. And I don't mean to call him crappy. I mean, I love Pacheco. I think White could have breakout potential. Connor's old and Montgomery's a backup now. So it's a little bit back and forth. And obviously, I need to probably grab another running back. I could also go another wide receiver. I mean, Elijah Moore's been getting a lot of love. Zay Flowers, I like quite a bit. AR, he's still up here too if I wanted to take a big swing on another quarterback, but we'll see what happens with that draft. Obviously, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Also, check out the podcast in the description for golf, football, and hockey content. But besides that, peace out, everybody.